Welcome to the Modern Application Development 2 screencast. In this screencast, we'll see how to push events from server. For this, you will need a Linux development environment, and you will need an editor, and you will have to install Redis and Celery so we can experiment. Okay, now let's see, why do we need server-sent events? Let's assume you are building a cricket score application. There's a match going on, somebody is going to update the score, and then you will have to broadcast that score to multiple users. Okay, let's make it simple. Assume this was a server, right? And this is a browser. One of your sports enthusiasts is keeping track of the score, right? There could be more than one, and there is a score page here which they are accessing, right? And then they are getting response from it. Each one is a request response, right? And let's see this. Okay. I assume there are 300 or 500, how many our users are watching the score. Now there is somebody updating the scores from the backend. Somebody is at the field updating the match scores as the match goes on, right? And the same scores gets updated into database or some storage, and then whenever somebody visits the page, it's shown to the user. Now what's the problem here? Because the match can go at its own speed, right? Sometimes the score doesn't change much, sometimes the score changes, sometimes you add commentary, sometimes you don't add commentary. So for the users to get the latest, he has to keep refreshing the page, right? Otherwise he won't get the latest. Everything is a request response. He won't get any score if he doesn't refresh. So one of the ways of solving is to make the page auto refresh, right? You kind of have some kind of JavaScript timeout. Once it times out, you refresh, maybe every 2 seconds, maybe every 4 seconds or something, you refresh, or you manually click on the refresh button. It's a problem still, because now you're doing refresh for no reason. Sometimes refresh might have some data, sometimes it may not, and sometimes even before you hit the refresh, data would have changed multiple times, so your user would miss out some updates. Now instead of a browser asking for the score every time, what if it asks one time, asking it like send me scores whenever there's an update, and the servers keep sending it, right? Keep sending the data, and that is called server sent events, where server keeps sending data to the browser as long as the browser is interested. Now this is a standard feature in the browser. Almost all the browsers support it now. You can go to MDN Web Docs page to see what all the browsers that support this. There is a page, yeah, here. So almost all except Internet Explorer and Dino. Dino is like a node-like environment, so it doesn't matter that much. Internet Explorer doesn't support. Everyone else actually supports. Now there are two parts to it, like we saw. One is, how does the server keep sending events to the browser, and how does the browser receive it? Now it uses the same HTTP protocol, so it's not a new protocol. It's just extends the current HTTP protocol with content type called event/text event stream, text/event stream. Usually you will have HTML, right? So here, if you are actually, let's say we are pushing the data now, this will be a push. Just mark it as some other color or bigger. It's a pipe, right? Right. So this is the event. This is the event, right? Okay, so this will have a content type. text slash event stream, and that's how the server sends it, just like in this format, but it's a text that it sends. And then the browser knows how to understand this event stream and calls respective JavaScript methods so that you can handle them. Now let's see on the server side how it's sent. So on the server side, it sends like this. There are actually 3 items that it can send. One is event, one is data, and the other one is ID and retry. And I think they can send all 4. Yeah, event, data, ID, and retry. ID and retry are useful when actually for some reason this becomes disconnected, right? If this becomes disconnected, then it kind of tells browser how long to wait before you retry and what was the last event that sent, from where you can pull the next set of events. Event is actually type of the event, because you could send many types of data. For example, in this case, we could name the event as score, and the data can have any JSON text saying time, for example, commentary, score, etc., etc. in your scoring application, right? And then ID is a unique ID for each of the message. So if you miss some message, you can pull it from the last message. Now that is on the server side. That's how we send. But on the client side, how are we going to receive? On the client side, we are going to use something called event source. You can go read about this API event source. It's defined in JavaScript. You give a path API, or wherever you implemented your controller endpoint to the event source, and then you can pass the credential, because some of these pushes could be credential controlled. Then you say with credential is equal to true, then it will send all the cookies and stuff. Now this event source returns makes a call back on message whenever there is a new message sent through the server, and then you can handle the message in whatever way you want to handle. This event itself will contain the data, like will contain all of that, those 4 things that I told you: event data, event type, and things like that. So we can take the event data and handle it. Now let's see how to implement this in our Flask application. We'll also look at how to implement in Vue and without Vue, right? To start with, we need to install 3 more packages. One is called Flask SSE, other one is Gunicorn and Gevent. Now Flask SSE gives the functionality that you don't need to build these event stream raw messages by yourself. Instead, it can handle it can abstract out all of that so that you can do it very easily, right? So that you don't have to build these messages and push it using raw. If you want to experiment, you can write that too, but to make it easy, Flask SSE wraps around it, and it's easy to use. And it also uses Redis internally, so you should have Redis installed already. So I think since we have already installed Celery, Redis is already installed, so we're going to use the same package on same server as well. Why does Flask SSE uses Redis? It kind of gives an additional functionality where each message queue on the server is also maintained in Redis, and every customer or every user on the browser is subscribed through that, and hence it kind of gives you scalability push pub sub feature through only pushed through the HTTP transport layer, right? So just to be sure, this is still an HTTP call, right? HTTP protocol. It's not anything different from your regular protocol. So it kind of uses all of the HTTP features, and all of your regular servers also should work. Now to run locally, until now we were using, if you look at our local setup, we are using develop server, right? Local run develop server and running the python main.py. Now this is a single thread and single process, and that can handle it, because now you at any point you could have multiple browsers connecting, and that might need multiple processes to run on the server. So we have to use the proper application server, and hence we are going to use gunicorn, right? That's what we are going to install it, and we'll have a look at it, what it means. And then we are going to use g-event to give like an asynchronous feature on the server side, so that when it's sent to each one, it doesn't keep waiting in loop, but it can send and then go to the next one, etc., etc. Right? You can learn more about gunicorn here on the gunicorn server. I think in the last term we did look into how to install and use gunicorn, right? So it's here, you can try it out. Similarly, g-event also, you can have a look at it. Right, both are packages, Python packages are available. You can go into details of them. Right now, once you put them into requirements.txt, you need to install them. I've already installed them. So and my environment is set up in .env, so I don't have to do any more. Now, like I said, instead of local run, we are going to use gunicorn to run. So I'm going to make a new file, and I'm not going to update a local run. I'm going to keep it like that, just for us to know what's the difference. And I'll call local gunicorn .sh. Right now, inside gunicorn run, local gunicorn run, this is how it looks. Though you can see that only difference is gunicorn, and it takes the Flask app that needs to run, and a worker class is g-event, and I'm running it on port 8000. I'm going to have at least 4 workers. You can have many workers based on the CPU your machine has, etc., etc. And I'm going to run it in a staging, like, and define a new environment called stage, and use that, because I don't want to modify my local config yet. But if you're going to do that, you can also update. You could have updated this, but I'm going to create a new config just to make sure it's all clean and separate for you to experiment. Right, let me add them. I'm going to keep most of the things same. Right, everything is same except there is Redis URL here. This is the Redis URL that SSE is going to use in any environment. So I'm going to add across all 3. That's the only extra thing that we're going to add here, right? Redis URL. And we have defined a stage config. And since we have defined a stage config, we are going to import that in our main, right? We had local config here. We have to import the stage config and use it too. All right. Okay. Now here we had one production. Now we'll also add like a stage, if else. Right, let's add that here. Okay, it's nothing special, it's the same thing, but just imports from stage config if the environment is stage. Okay, so that part is done. Right, now we'll have to set up the Flask SSE. It's quite straightforward. The first thing is to actually import Flask SSE. Right, and then you have to set up the Flask SSE. That we are going to do here. Okay, so now actually here we are using something called blueprint. Passing the SSE and URL prefix to that. Blueprints are a feature of Flask. Feature of a Flask. You can go learn about it. It kind of makes it easy to manage controllers. For example, if you have, separate out the controllers. We have all controllers in the controllers.py, right? And all APIs in API.py. If you want to separate out the controllers and make it modular and have their own related stuff in that folder, then you could use blueprints. Makes it easy to isolate and keep them separate and clean. It's like an advanced feature of Flask, but it's easy to use, and if you want to make it modular. So this uses blueprint. In blueprint you define the app and you define the blueprint, and then you register the blueprint with the Flask, either with the URL endpoint that it should be enabled for, or without it. Here we are going to define one endpoint called stream that gets used by SSE to stream the data, right? And we can have other sub streams like slash stream slash something, but we are going to have URL prefix all of that stream, which will send the SSE inputs. So this is just the one, right? Now on the client side, we need a template, right, to receive the event and display it somehow. So I'm going to create a template called show updates. Let me just call show updates dot html, right? So I'm just going to paste the whole thing. Currently you don't need Vue, so I'm just no need of this, any of this, right? So it's just a simple Flask SSE where I'm just subscribing to SSE stream. Either you can use this, or even if you want to make it really simple, you could use slash stream. But we can just use that. I think it's fine. It kind of makes it easier. Now I'm listening to an event called greeting, and then whatever greeting the server sends, I'm pushing it. Now greeting is an event type. If you see here, we said there can be many event types. Here we have an event type called greeting. But if you are sending scores, you could have had an event type called scores. And if you are sending event types called updates, you can send event type updates, and you can handle all of them differently. You can subscribe to each one of them separately. And there's a standard one called error if there is an error, right? You could have many. For example, if you get scores, you could do something else with that, like for example score as an event type. You can handle that separately, right? We got score, for example, right? Okay, so now we have show updates. Now I have to modify my controller to go to that page, show updates page, right? So I'm just going to add show updates controller and to show updates, right? Okay, I'm just going to replace this. It's just a get, and it kind of renders show update.html and says in show updates you are actually connecting to the stream. You could have used localhost /stream, but I'm going to do .sse stream because this is built-in template, Jinja template, and this is built-in Flask function to use to give the URL for this. Okay, now I think we are kind of ready to receive, but who will push the data into this stream, right? So we'll create a dummy function, dummy controller to send some test message into that stream, so that that can be shown to the user. So we'll do another controller. I'll say a test message, and this test message is also a get. I'm just going to access it, which will actually call sse.publish. This is how you publish to the clients. Once this is called, all this is called one SSE publish gets called here. Everything gets published to all the browsers, right? And it's of type greeting. You can see here it's of type greeting, which is what we have subscribe to here in the first one, greeting, right? That's it actually. I'll just a message sent to browsers, please check, right? Okay, let's save this and let's start the server. My Redis is already running, so I'm not going to start that now. So we have show updates and then publish, message send, check the other browser. Okay, let's start this. I've also started my Celery, beat and Celery worker, right? Okay, now if I go to this place, it has Flask SSE quick start. Now we want to publish something to it, right? Let's publish from a different browser. It was called send test send message, right? Local host colon 8000 8 message sent, and here it says server says hello, right? We could do one more small change here. Instead of actually saying alert, you can actually add it to the div. But let's go make one more small change. Instead of doing this, you could just going to repeat once more. I'm going to press again here. You can see that server says hello, and it can be multiple pages. One here and one here, right? Okay, now let's refresh this. Okay, here twice and here, right? So you get everywhere wherever the users are. If they were scoring, they would have come here and here. We're going to just upgrade it little more and make it use with Vue, and we'll update the div, right? So that you will also know that it can be used with Vue. So I'm going to create another template called show updates Vue.html. Now one thing that I wanted to show is this. You can see that it's the slash stream. Could have been localhost colon 8000 slash stream, but it is slash stream is appends to the domain, so it works like that. Okay, now let's create another template, new file. We're going to use Vue to do it. We're going to create a new JavaScript. We are not going to use app. We're going to use a separate app for this. So let's call it show alerts or something. .js. Oh, okay. In this JS, I'm just going to paste some code and explain. It's pretty straightforward. You have an app with the div app. The template has a div and it goes through a list, printing all the messages in the list. Now where does the list come from? List comes from data. Now where does the data come from? Data comes from our event source. I'm going to define the event source in our mounted function, and I'm going to add listener to it. Whenever there's a greeting, I'm going to pass the data. I'm going to take message out of this data and put this message into this array, and hence this should get updated, right? So let's go back to our template and add everything that is required, right? I'm going to import, it's a simple one, so I'm going to import Vue directly and then define a div with the ID app, because that's what we are going to use here, app, right? And then calling this show alerts.js, right? That's it. So now to open this, we have to write a controller. Just like show updates, I'm going to write another one called show updates view. It's just going to do the same thing. Okay, and then nothing special. We're still going to use publish and see how it publishes the hello to it, right? Okay, let's start this again. Is it running? This is running. This will start again. It will be show updates underscore view. All right, and now if I have another browser, can you see? Can see the how fast it gets. We'll open one more. Open the same browser. Let's assume these are the two people who are watching the score. Right now, right, you can see both of them receiving this data thing. Here you are not refreshing the page, right? You are not refreshing the page, you are not refreshing the page. As soon as the data is sent from the backend, it goes to all the browsers. So it's this is called server sent events. Now if you are interested, you can click on network part of it and see the connection details. We can reload this. Here is the stream, right? You can see that the file type is stream and it's a get request, and you can see other details, right? Actually there's not much details at this point because it has not made any call, but this is what it is getting called every time when the server sends the push, right? Okay, now we'll go one more step. Now I'm just going to close these things, pull this away. Okay, we are going to do one more step. Instead of me calling test message, assume that I'm going to run a long job and the job wants to send an update, right? But the long job is triggered by the user, right? Let's say it's something like this, right? Starting a long running job, and the job is called long running job, and then I'm just going to print I'm starting a job, and whenever that gets completed, it gets completed. We are not waiting for the job to complete here, then just returning job started. Now in our long running job, we want to give updates to the end user saying what is the current status of the job. I'm going to add a job, so let's stop these things. No, you can start in a while. Okay, long running job, right? So let's add a task called long running job. Okay, in the tasks, okay, I'm going to add a long running job, right? And this is print, it won't be sent to the user, it has a string. Then I'm going to push this to the end user saying job has started, and let's say we'll write whatever. Okay, as part of the job, let's say file uploading, or let's say your media conversion, you're converting MP3 into MP4 or whatever, that long running job, right? Or you're sending mails to some hundreds of people, right? Let's think about that only. Let's say we are sending mails to hundreds of people. So I'm just going to dummy it here, saying okay, for for people in 100 people, uh, send an email, right? Now sending an email will take some time. Let's assume it will make an external call. It probably takes a second, right? Because it makes an SMTP call, sends it, and then closes the connection and gets back. It might take way less than 1 second, but for our clarity, we'll put 1 or 2 seconds just to see. We'll print something so that we know that the job is running, and then we are going to get the update. Okay, I'm not going to print it here. I'm not going to print it here. Running, it will say send. We'll do it sending email data string. Say we'll print LP also. LP at. Okay, and then once everyone is sent, we'll push job completion. We'll tell to the user the job is complete. All right, now so we started emailing job, completed emailing job, right? Okay, now this is getting called from our controller called start long running job. You could have called it start emailing job, for example, but I'll leave that here. Now we had some imports here, so I'm going to do that imports. Import time and also import SSE, right? Okay, going down. Okay, it seems ready. I'm going to start the controller, main app again. I'm going to start the jobs again. You can see long running job is there. Okay, I'm going to go. I'm already on that page. I'm going to have another page which is into the same page so that we see updates at both. Now I'm going to start the long running job. Right, the job has started. Here there is an update. Here I'll just make a connection. Okay, here. So this is actually getting pushed from the backend as a job goes. You can see that the call is every 2 seconds, right? 17, 19, 21, 23, 25, 27. So if you see our code in the jobs, you can see that we are sending it every 2 seconds because we are sleeping for 2 seconds, right? And then we're printing this, and we're going to go up to 100 and send. Now, like user, without pulling it again and again, is getting the updates. So instead of showing this, you could even actually show a progress bar, showing it to 100%, or make a percentage of the total into that and show a progress bar, that how many emails are being processed or sent, right? So this is easy to implement and do as well. Now, just like how we triggered this by a user trigger, we could also trigger this using a timer, like we saw last time. You could trigger. I'll add a simple thing. There is a print current time job. Along with printing, we could also send it to the front end. Instead of greeting, we'll make it as some other type, Okay, here. Okay. Right, this won't be greeting. I'll let it be greeting. I think it'll just be over. Is this over? Is the upload over? If I was a user, that's what I would have been checking, right? 72% over or whatever. 100 out of 100 users, we have sent it to 75. Okay, let's wait for another 30 seconds for it to get over. Here, we're going to set up a batch job that calls this print timer. It also prints, and along with it sends to the user who is online and trying to watch this. Right? So we'll do that once this gets over. Okay, the job is completed. It's done. Whoever is subscribed to this stream has got it, right? In the sense, whoever is subscribed to this stream and this event has been getting the updates, right? Now let's do one more, which, send just a time one. Okay, let's start this because this is a time one. It needs a timer, right? Long current. Okay, it's getting sent, but I think let's see if there is a. Can see it's getting sent. Yeah, there you go. Wait for yeah, there you go. This one is every 10 seconds, so to wait. One more we'll watch. Yeah, so now you get the idea, right? So it can be pushed even without user being triggered. This is at the time trigger, right? Just going to stop this time trigger, right? Okay, so now until now what we have learned that we can push the events by simple setup, but it needs Gunicorn G event kind of setup. It's easy to do that, and we know that we can use in the regular JavaScript or with Vue. What we need to know is there is a class type called event source that we're going to use, and we can call add listener on top of that for a specific type of event, and then we can publish it, right? We are not doing any retry since last ID, that kind of thing. You can go actually look into that yourself, right? If you want to do retries, for example, once it gets disconnected. I want to go to the advanced part of it. There is one simple thing that I wanted to show in the advanced part, which is a need of, not every user wants to see the same message, right? For example, here, this user and this user were watching the same channel and same user without any access control or anything like that. For example, if you wanted to see his updates and this person wanted to see their updates, they should have been looking into different channels. Right now, Flask SSE gives you concept of channels. Channels could be like, very specific to user, and it's just a string. So it could be like we could be passing it to specific channel. Let's say here, if I go to tasks, let's go to controller, right? And here we are pushing it to, this is event type, but channel is default channel is SSE, but let's say we wanted to push into some other channel like users.social, or we wanted to point it to this specific user. Let's say if the username is equal to Thejesh, right? Ideally I would be taking from auth, but I'm just hard coding here. You could pass us that as a channel name, and he can subscribe to that channel, right? And the event could be anything. And then you could go ahead and add an extra access control to check the access in the default main, right, where we're including where is it here? Before we include, we could do some access check, right? Before the request, if channel is equal to analytics, then G is GN admin, then only then. Or you could go like, if channel is equal to username, only then allow, else do 403, right? You could do this as well. Then what it does is it checks whether he's trying to subscribe to specific channel, if the channel name is username. If not, we'll throw in 403. So you can do this kind of access control, right? I mean, here URL prefix is SSE, but it could, both are works. So this is how you do channels and access control on the channels. Make specific channels for each of the user or each action, activity or something, and validate based on the user or the whom that activity belongs to. I usually generally have like channels per user if you want to send an update to that specific user, and then actually use that to get the access control. Check his username is equal to same as channel. If not, throw an error. Then you will have to make one small change here too, because you won't be, for example, here you won't be directly mapping it to thing. You have to will be mapping it to specific channel, not just event type. So you could use channel like that. For example, this will remain the same. Then we'll add, okay, it will be username, that will be Thejesh GN, right? And then it will form the URL for you, and then you are subscribed to that specific channel, right? It won't be double quote, it will be single quote. Okay, so that's how you get the channel, subscribe to specific user for specific channel. I'm not going to show you the example with that. I would actually want you to try it and see how it goes. Add user specific channel based on this username, and make sure who is trying to use the channel is username and the channel names are same, right? Or throw an error. Make that change, try it out locally. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching.